So for the last part of our training, we're going to look at the types and indicators of the 5 categories of child abuse in the state of Pennsylvania. First, we're going to look at the serious physical injury, which the definition is any recent act or failure to act which causes non-accidental serious physical injury that causes a severe pain and significantly impairs a child's functioning, either temporarily or permanently. Now, there's 2 parts of this definition that carry through to the other 5 categories. The first is recent. When you see recent in the definition, it means within the last 2 years. And they all have to be non-accidental, meaning you did it on purpose. If you look at the indicators, which is on the right-hand side, some of the biggest indicators are any type of unexplained injury. So unexplained bruising, burns, things of that nature. If a child struggles to explain their injury, please bring that up to your coordinator. At the bare minimum, this allows someone to look into what happened. This is why it is also important, especially when volunteering on a regular basis, to build relationships with the people and the children you are working with. Through this relationship, you can understand if the child is struggling with something. The other parts of the indicators are multiple injuries in various stages of healing, neglected or untreated injuries, or wearing extra layers of clothing, or clothing that is inappropriate for the weather, so students refusing to take their jacket off or always wearing long sleeves and things of that nature. So this is where building a relationship with a child is going to come into play, because if they're really trying to hide something or if they're just wearing long sleeves because they're always cold. The next category is serious mental injury. And if you look at the definition, it is very similar to the one of physical injury. Any act or failure to act which causes non-accidental serious mental injury to the child. You see in the definition, it does not need to be recent to be reported. And instead of indicators, there are symptoms. So in our limited work with children, mental injury is hard to decipher, meaning we don't spend a lot of time with them to decipher these things. The indicators or symptoms also could be signs of other issues for the child. So it doesn't mean they've necessarily been abused, it could mean that there's something else going on. If you see a child move or shift into any of these symptoms, so you see a child move into being anxious, move into being depressed, becomes socially withdrawn from the group or from you when you're tutoring, becomes fearful of something, you need to let someone know that, and you need to tell your coordinator and go through the reporting process. The last one, groups like PAL or our tutoring groups will be able to figure this out more than some others, is an inability to accomplish age-appropriate developmental and social tasks. This is where you're really going to know if a child is struggling with reading or struggling writing things down or drawing certain things. There are certain tasks that at certain ages children are supposed to be able to do. So if they're struggling with that, please let the teacher know that you're working with, or the coordinator at your agency. They might know it already, but it is better to report it than not. The next category is sexual abuse. This is the one we hear about all the time on the news. It is the most talked about, but in reality, it accounts for roughly 10% of reported abuse last year in the state of Pennsylvania. Studies have shown, and people believe it is also the most underreported category due to the stigma and media attention that sexual abuse gets. If you look at the definition includes not just physical acts, but also includes exploiting a child sexually. It also does not need to be recent to be reported. So if we look at this, there's 2 categories on the right-hand side. The one is the definition for sexual exploitation. The other is some things that the state considers automatically sexual abuse. One of them that you might not know what it means, but involuntary deviant sexual activity, that basically means anything physical that doesn't include intercourse. So sexual exploitation, it includes exposing children to adult sexual activity, exposing them basically to pornography, so adult movies or photographs. And then it also includes having the child pose, undress, or perform in a sexual nature. So we're going to look at the indicators for this. The column on the left is your physical indicators, and the one on the right is your behavior indicators. If you look at the column on the left, most have to do with the genital areas, or areas of the body that typically would be clothed in public. If a student comes to you complaining about those areas of the body, do not let them show you, but take them to your coordinator, who will go get them the proper medical attention that they need. While it seems inappropriate to us that a student would want to show us those type of things, people who have been abused oftentimes will tell people things that they trust. And you could be one of those people, because you are coming to help them in some way and are building a relationship with the minor that is non-judging. 90% of children know the person that is abusing them, meaning that, especially when you get younger, it means that it's someone within the home, someone that's around the home, and it's usually someone that they're taught to trust from an early age. So they might come bring things to you that you think are inappropriate, because you might be one of the few people that is coming from a non-judging place and is coming from a place that builds trust. So just so you are aware of that. One of the other big signs because of that statistic is unexplained sleep problems. So sweats, terrors, nightmares, anything that is causing the child not to sleep, and they're not sure why. Some of the behavior indicators, most of them have to deal with age, inappropriate sexual knowledge, or unusual abnormal sexual behaviors. So you ask what's inappropriate. If you feel it is inappropriate or makes you uncomfortable, then that is something you need to let the coordinator and their teacher know. Some of the big ones, as you get down to the bottom, creating and playing out sexual scenarios with toys or dolls. You'll see this mainly because the children might not have the vocabulary to tell you what's going on, but subconsciously they're working it out in their play and what they're doing. Also, you'll see a regression in young people, so going back to sucking their thumb or going to baby talk or things like that. And again, that's just another coping mechanism for them to try to bring comfort to themselves when they're struggling with something. Statutory sexual assault and student abuse, these are parts of the law. They're not part of the mandatory reporting parts of the law, or they're reported a little differently, which is why I wanted to bring them up to you. If you're made aware of statutory sexual assault, it was formerly statutory rape, please inform your supervisor, and if you're working in the school, let the teacher of the student know. It does not fall within the boundaries of mandated reporting, but we still want to let our coordinators know what's going on, and what the teachers that we work with know what is going on. Basically, the definition is sexual intercourse with someone under the age of 16 when the other person is 4 or more years older, and that is calendar years, it's not school years. So it's not just a freshman with a senior, it's a 15-year-old with a 19-year-old, a 14-year-old with an 18-year-old, 13-year-old with a 17-year-old. It has to deal with calendar years when you're under the age of 16. Student abuse is reported completely differently. You report this type of abuse directly to the police and then follow the traditional reporting chains. Student abuse is limited to sexual or physical abuse by a school employee when acting as that school employee, and this includes coaches and volunteers at the school as well. When in doubt about whether a person was acting in their school role, it is best to report the abuse to the authorities. The next category is serious physical neglect. This is the category you're most likely to incur in your work, as it accounts for roughly 80% of reported child abuse cases last year. The key to the definition is something that is prolonged or repeated. So if you look at the definition, it's simply serious physical neglect constituting prolonged or repeated lack of supervision or failure to provide essentials of life, including adequate medical and dental care, which endangers a child's life or development or impairs the child's functioning. So, essentials of life here, we're talking food, clothing, shelter, medical dental care, hygiene, basically things that a child needs to thrive and to develop at a normal rate. Developing a trustworthy relationship with the people you are working with in these situations is imperative. By building a relationship and consistently working with the same child and people, you can see changes physically and mentally in a child. Also, if a child says they do not have an essential of life, food, shelter, heat, clothing, hygiene, medical care, report these things immediately to LaSalle Security and University Ministry and Service. So, at the bare minimum, we can help these children and their families get help. We are not here to judge families about what they can or cannot provide their family or determine if it's even child abuse. We simply report it because our goal is to get the families and the children help. So if you look at the indicators, um, inadequate weight gain, I'll also say weight loss, or anything that you feel um, dictates a failure to thrive or improper nutrition, delays in physical development, persistent hunger, a lack of hygiene, personal care, or severe body odor. Now that you need to be careful as well because you got to look at who you're dealing with, the culture of the person, the age of the person as well. Um, Consistently soiled clothing, consistent lack of supervision, untreated physical problems or medical conditions, and then lastly, the deprivation of food, water, heat, or shelter. And I would say if anyone brings up deprivation of food, water, heat, or shelter, report those immediately so we can get those things for those families. And the last category is imminent risk. Basically, imminent risk is anything that leads to you believing that if you let the child out of your care, abuse could happen. It needs to be recent, and the allegation must pertain to serious physical injury or sexual abuse or exploitation. The two examples given are different circumstances where the child is currently okay, but due to the circumstances could be harmed because you let them out of your care. So a parent leaves a child in the care of a known sex offender, but a neighbor walks in before abuse occurs. So this is leaving your child in someone's care that is probably inappropriate to watch your child. And then the last one is leaving a child unattended in an extremely hot or extremely cold car. So the child is currently okay when you leave them, but once you leave them, you don't know what's going to happen to the child, and in a hot or cold situation, it's putting them in an unhealthy environment. So they are the categories of child abuse. Again, if you see anything that makes you uncomfortable or you're not sure, it's best to report the abuse to 215-991-2111 and let LaSalle Security take it from there. But when in doubt, make sure you report it.